Welcome to From Beyond with your host, Glenn Boddice. Join me as we explore spirituality, self-help, and channeling spirit. Hello and welcome to From Beyond with your host Glenn Boddice, spiritual medium. Thank you for tuning in for another action-packed episode. As in this week's episode, we're going to be deep diving into the subject matter of visiting other timelines. Also in this week's episode, we have the channeling from the world of spirit, which sees me becoming a vessel for spirit to bring their wisdoms and communications forward. And then later on in the show, we'll have a sneaky peek at this week's forecast reading. So without further ado, we're going to crack on. As I say, we're going to be talking about visiting other timelines. Well, first of all, it sounds all very exciting, doesn't it? So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the journey within. Instead of externalizing everything, on this occasion, we're going to go within and venture far and wide beyond our wildest imaginations. And the way that we do this, or why we do this, is potentially we do this to either heal or cleanse or heal a part of our past so that it will make a dramatic change in our present moment reality. Another reason we would do this is maybe we're curious about how our ancestors lived and what they did and how their way of life was, and maybe doing some ancestral healing along the way by exploring this. Also, we can go into remote viewing by doing this as well and get some help and guidance. So let's talk you through this process and talk about the magic that this process of visiting other timelines. I'll get there in the end, won't I? So how do we do this? Well, first of all, I would certainly recommend, before you even begin to start doing this, is get yourself familiarized with the practice of meditation. Now, I know to some of you, when you hear that word, you feel really bored and really, I can't do that, I'm too busy. Well, you need to get into that discipline, I would say, of relaxation. So maybe before even getting into meditation, just do some breath work, some conscious breathing. And we do this by, for me, this is how I do it, is if I know that life has been running at a fast pace and I can feel myself being adrenalized. In fact, I did this over the Christmas months because, as you know, I'm always busy doing things. And when everything came to a halt and a stop over the Christmas period, I had to focus on the physical body and how it was responding, and it was responding in fight or flight mode, so very adrenalized. So in order for me to calm that down, I had to focus on the breath work. So consciously, I would observe my physicality and notice these changes that I was on fight or flight mode, and then I would do the sacred breath. So I'd breathe in through the nose for 5 seconds. I would then hold that breath inside of my lungs for 5 seconds until it began to tingle and become uncomfortable. And then I would breathe that breath out of my mouth for 5 seconds. And I would repeat this cycle of breathing until after a short period of time, it depends, each individual is different, but after a short period of time of doing that conscious breath work, you begin to feel calm, relaxed. You'll notice that your muscles will release all of that tension. Your mind will start to just calm down and slow down because you're doing this sacred breathing. And it's very relaxing. And what I want to say to you that are wanting to try this, what we're talking about today, is to just go with it. Don't fight it. Don't put obstacles in the way. Just go with it. Focus on the feeling as you're focusing on the breath work, and just observe the difference in yourself by doing this. The reason I bring this up is because relaxation is the key to everything we're talking about in today's episode. So once you are in a relaxed state, this will slow the level of your thinking down, which will enable you to go into meditation a lot easier. Meditation, I would recommend in this situation that you sit in an upright position. You don't want to be lying down. You can if you wish, but know that you may go to sleep because you're lying down. It's just your body's way of thinking, okay, it's bedtime. Well, I want to encourage you to do this sat upright because you will get more accurate results and wonderful experiences. So sit upright, get yourself nice and comfortable in your seated position, and you can either put some frequency toning music on where it focuses on specific frequencies that will get you into that form of relaxation. Ideally for me, I don't like guided meditations. I find them a distraction personally. I just like tones, where there's a bit of a rumble and a bit of an ambience in the background. I know there's a lot of meditations like this that last for hours on end on YouTube. So go on over to YouTube, see what aligns with you. If it feels right to you, then you can design your meditation. Ideally, I would recommend that, maybe start it off small, go 10 minutes meditation and build up to around 20 minutes. You can go further, but I reckon 20 minutes is quite enough. Okay, so you want to be going into meditation, getting in the practice of turning off the mind chatter. Let's face it, we all have it. Excuse me. We all have this mind chatter where when we're slowing the mind down, the next minute a random thought will pop in our head and we'll think, oh, I've got to go shopping tomorrow. I need some milk. I need some bread and all of this. And really you want to be aware that that mind chatter is there, but you're not giving it your focus, your time and attention. And what you'll find when you get into that discipline of doing that, you begin to cancel those thoughts out. They're not there, and you're just comfortable of being in that sacred space of nothingness. Now, the mind likes things to keep it busy, to keep it active. So it does take some practice of getting in that space of nothingness. And this is where the magic happens. This is where you can, if you wish, visit other timelines. So to take this to a next level, what I genuinely, I'll speak correctly, shall I, do is I find a trigger memory in my mind. And what I mean by that is something that pops up in my head, maybe from my past, that I haven't thought about for years. And I think, oh, that's interesting. Why am I thinking that? And with that being in mind, I focus into that memory, that trigger memory that's coming up from the past. And I dial into it. I hold it in my consciousness and I observe it and explore it. So I'm focusing in and it's going around in my mind on a loop. That's what you're wanting to achieve in this process. So allow it to go round your mind in a loop. And what you will find, because you're holding frequency, you're dialing into that trigger memory in your past, you'll visit and explore that memory further, and you'll start to get branches coming off of that thought, and then you'll start to get visions of that experience. And this is where you can explore it. So hold that in your focus. Allow yourself just to go with the flow. Don't resist it. Don't try and manipulate it. Now, this is where some of us do this in our dream state. We may have a dream and we don't like the outcome of what's happened. So we'll rewind in our mind whilst we're dreaming, and we'll try and change the outcome to what we want. Well, with this situation, don't allow yourself to do that. Just go with the flow. Explore this trigger memory, which will take you to that particular timeline that you went through. So in order for you to hold that in your consciousness and experience and explore this, you need to get into alignment. And getting into alignment with this process, what I'm talking about is whilst you're seeing in your mind those experiences that you've had in your past, and you're then seeing other elements within that vision, just observe and notice your feelings, how it makes you feel in that situation, all of your senses basically, the visions that you're seeing, the sounds that you're hearing, the smells, the sense of touch and the sense of taste. All of your faculties will be online. So do pay attention. Now, this is, as I said earlier, very much an inside job. So all of these experiences, these different aspects of you, such as your feelings, visions, smells, and all of that, will occur in your mind, but you'll be aware of them. Your mind will bring forward that information and those signals. So just allow yourself to relax, observe, and go with the flow. It's as simple as that. I say simple as that, but you have to get in the process of silencing and quietening the mind to such a level that you're okay about relaxing and letting go. You know that you're going to be safe. You know that you're going to be protected and guided along this journey. And it's a beautiful journey, particularly when you do visit some of these old memories. And what you will find is whilst you're visiting these old memories, elements that you've forgotten about or you wasn't aware that was happening in that space, you'll start to experience it. So maybe you will hear the music that was in the background whilst you was having that experience in a particular situation in your past. Maybe you'll start to notice the feelings, the energy, how it felt in that surroundings, how it made you feel. Was it comfortable? Was it friendly? Was it approachable? And maybe at the time you wasn't conscious of that information. You were more focused on what you were talking about or what was being said. So all of these elements will start to flag up, and it can be a very enlightening experience when you relive some of these past visions and alignments with the past there. Also smells as well. And for example, we've all had this. When we've smelt a particular smell, when we've been out and about in our current reality, and instantly, as soon as we smell that smell, it's a trigger. It takes us back to an old memory. And all of a sudden we're like, I remember that smell. Where do I know that smell from? Oh yes, that reminds me of when I went to Butlins when I was 7 years old, for example. And then when you get that trigger smell or something like that, you get the memories, you get all the other information. So it is in my belief that we are constantly obtaining information, whether that is smells, tastes, touches, textures, feelings, emotions, sounds, visions, symbolisms. We're all collecting this information all at the same time. But because we're focusing, say, dialing into our vocabulary whilst we're having that encounter, we're not aware that we're soaking up all of this information. And I wouldn't say that our consciousness or the recording of our experience in that timeline is always there. And so it's interesting when we get these triggers that take us back to these pivotal points of our timeline. Yes, so fascinating, isn't it, when we have that experience? I mean, another example is a piece of music. Now, for me, music is a great, shall we call it, a trigger to elements and timelines that I've experienced. And many of you may listen to radio shows where they do Guess the Year. And whenever I hear a show like that, I'll hear a song and it brings forward a trigger, a memory in my mind when I'm listening to it. And I'm thinking, oh, I remember doing that when this song came out. I remember singing this when this song came out. What year was that? How old was I? And I go through this rigmarole, if you like, of having these visions in my mind based around that song, which was a trigger. And for me, this is how I get the answer for those radio shows that say, guess the year, because I'm having these experiences through triggered audio sensation. So your sensations are recording all of this information. So with this process of visiting other timelines, you will find that a lot, as I say, of that information that you weren't aware of at the time will start to flag up and come to the surface. Again, don't fight it, don't resist it, just allow yourself to be there and experience it and embrace it. And it will bring forward lots and lots of details. In fact, it is my understanding that in the practice of hypnosis, part of that process when they're doing some healing work and cleansing work is they'll use some of these triggers, again, in order for you to revisit these various points in your life, and they'll utilize all of your mind, that it's record all that information so that they can tap in onto that timeline and reset it so that it affects your current moments in reality and improves it. And in many respects, you can do this yourself. You don't have to go into a hypnotic state in order to do that. And this is what I'm, in a nutshell, talking about. Visiting other timelines is very, very beneficial when you do this, because you can learn from your former self. Maybe at the time you were too consumed, as I say, with the situation. You didn't realize that there was all this value in that experience. So you can, like I say, visit the former self, and you can experience every perspective in that situation. So you'll first of all see everything I've just mentioned, your perception, what you were saying, how you were feeling, the smells, the tastes, the touches. You'll get all of that. But then in this encounter, you'll get to experience other people's point of view, how they're thinking, how they're feeling, the thoughts that they're about to say, their temperament. Are they frustrated? Are they angry? Are they happy? Are they very much devoted to what you're saying? You'll get to experience everybody's vibration in that experience, including, if you allow yourself to expand enough, the energies around you during that encounter. I find this interesting when we look at what's happening around us in these situations, because genuinely speaking, when we are visiting elements from our past, we're focusing on what we experienced in that moment. And like I say, if we expand a little bit further, people that were in that situation that we know of. But to take it further, to expand your consciousness further, it's interesting when we observe our surroundings and what was happening all around us and what other people were thinking and doing. I mean, it intrigues me, this level of working. And people talk about non-player characters, people in the background just filling space. And in many respects, when we're doing this exercise, there could be a little bit of weight to that theory, because, you see these people and you remember people walking by you. For example, I mentioned Butlins just off the top of my head in this episode, but I remember a situation going back when I was a child and we went to Butlins, and I can see it very clearly. We was round where there was like a pool outside. There was a candy floss machine, lots of people, very, very busy. And there was like a carousel there with the horses, and there were rides there and all of that, hustle and bustle. And the next minute I remember walking, I think I was holding my granddad's hand or my dad's or something like that. I wasn't very old. And the next minute I felt something hot on my cheek, on my face. And I was aware that a man had just walked by me, because I wasn't that tall at that moment in time, and he had a cigarette in his hand, and the ash of the cigarette and the lit cigarette touched my cheek on my face, and it burnt my face and caused a cigarette burn. Well, this man realized what he did, and he stopped, And he said, I'm ever so sorry. And I remember what he looked like. He had a mustache, brown hair, very tall. Well, most people were tall to me at that moment in time, but he couldn't apologize enough. And he was talking to my parents and my granddad, and he was saying, I'm ever so sorry. I didn't realize he was there. But I remember that experience and those characters in that scenario. That was a triggered moment in my life, and it's very uncomfortable, very painful. I felt very embarrassed that the focus was on me. And it was a funny experience to have, being a child. I think I've just gone a little journey there with you myself, just by focusing on that triggered memory. Has taken me down that lane, and I've managed to pull all these bits of information forward just from that one memory. And this is what we're talking about today. We all have the ability to do this, but I'm encouraging you to do it via the gift of meditation. And you'll get some amazing information that comes forward. As I say, you can learn from that version of yourself. So as I gave you that example about me in that situation, I was very shy at that moment of my life. I know it's hard to believe, I don't shut up nowadays, but I was very shy. And so from that situation, I learned that, it's time to speak up. Because that happened, I was almost invisible to this gentleman that had walked by me with a lit cigarette. And yet I was very noticeable as a child at that age because I had really, really bright, almost white blonde hair. And it's a distinctive basin haircut that I had. So, you wouldn't miss me. I was very pale skinned and I always wore like tracksuits and things. I know it was busy in that situation, but yeah, you wouldn't normally miss me. But the fact that this gentleman didn't see me has put me down the avenue that maybe what I've got to learn from that situation is, because at that particular moment in my life, I didn't like hustle and bustle. I didn't like the crowds. I wasn't a fan of fairground rides or anything like that. So on one level, and it is possible, we can do this, I believe that my consciousness didn't want to be there. So with that being the case, my vibration changed and I became unseeable, if you like, unnoticeable, invisible, if you want to use that term, by this gentleman that walked by me and did that. Not intentionally because he didn't see me there. Potentially that's what's happened. So the lesson I've got from that is that we can do this in life. We can make ourselves become unknown, invisible to people. But also the lesson I've extracted from that is, no, it's time to own your power. It's time to make yourself be seen, be heard, be felt, be experienced. And then, some of these things will not arise and happen. Having said this, a few years back from now, when I was driving down one of the roads where I live, at the time I had a silver van and it was very noticeable. I used to put the headlights on because it was like early morning. No, I think it was later. It was probably about 11 o'clock, but, it was, I had the lights on nevertheless. And anyway, people would walk out in front of the van as if it was the normal thing to do. And I was amazed, why haven't you seen me? It's a big grey van. It's got the lights on. Why haven't you seen me? And they've walked in front of me as if I wasn't there. So on some level, I believe that I was doing it again, moving into different frequencies in different timelines. And the people that were walking across the road didn't observe me, didn't see me, because to their vibration, I wasn't there. Anyway, I'm going off on many tangents with this conversation. So let's reel it in a bit and get back on track to what we're talking about. So again, we're talking about visiting other timelines. So with this being the case, you'll start to discover oneness. And like I said earlier, when you expand your consciousness enough in these experiences, you'll find that everything and everyone is all expanding, is all learning from one another, is benefiting from one another's encounter and experience. So when you do this level of deep diving, visiting other timelines, maybe of your past, as we're speaking about today, it will have, I would call it, a ripple effect in the ocean of consciousness to all of those individuals and animals and whatever objects that were around you when you're having these thoughts, because you've changed your narrative, your perspective around this situation. That's just a really curious deep dive of mine in my thought processes. But I feel that this is what happens when we change something within us. It has a ricochet effect on everything around us. So everybody benefits, as long as we're doing it consciously, as long as we're doing it with respectfully as well, because it will have a ricochet effect. So what I want to say, the technique that I'm talking about today, we can use a similar technique to do what is most commonly known as remote viewing. And remote viewing is where we have a target to focus on. A target may be a destination, maybe an object, maybe a person. And using the techniques I've just shared with you, we dial into it and we blank everything else out of our awareness, out of our mind, out of our consciousness, and we just focus in intently into either the target object or the target location, destination, and we just hold space. We put the blinkers on and we hold space for that experience. And by holding space and allowing it to unfold in your consciousness, in awareness, you'll start to get visions. You'll start to get the smells, the tastes, the feelings, the emotions will start to come forward and they'll get amplified. Well, at this stage, what I'd like you to do is, ideally, if you can have someone with you that's observing you going through this process, or if you can record it, maybe a video or an audio, and as you're having this experience, you speak out loud what you're experiencing. And just say it, with non-judgment. Don't overthink. Just say exactly what you're experiencing. Imagine that you're a news reporter for either a TV or radio show there, and all you're doing is you're describing what you're experiencing in that moment. And trust what you experience and just share that information out loud. And it's fascinating what you can achieve by doing this. Many of you may know or may not know that last year, at the year of 2025, I was invited to be part of an online series, TV shows called the Supernatural UK. And one of the episodes that I featured on was visiting AI Atlas. And during that episode, myself and a colleague, we were handed envelopes, sealed envelopes, with a photograph of a destination. Now, we had no prior knowledge to what was in those envelopes. All we were told is to be at this location, turn up in person, and that we would be doing remote viewing. That's all we were told. And so we went there, we did that, and you can go and see this episode. It is available. If you go over to YouTube and type in the Supernatural UK and just look for that episode. I believe it was released just before Christmas of 2025. So go and check that out and you'll be able to see it for yourself what I'm talking about. But in that episode, we dialed in via remote viewing and we did a little bit of psychometry to help connect to the triggered object or the triggered location that we were asked to focus on. We didn't know what it was, where we were going, but we just held this envelope. And in doing so, we were transported to these locations. And I'm talking about a colleague of mine that was also a spiritual medium that was also doing this exercise. We did it individually. for the benefit of this episode. And we was just holding space for that experience. But what does make this experience a little bit more interesting is the fact that the location where we were was like an art exhibition. It was like an old scrapyard that had been turned into an ongoing art sort of thing, where there was loads of random objects from all different timelines, all different eras that have been repurposed, upcycled, if you like, into beautiful pieces of art. So you've got mannequins there, you've got car parts, you've got musical instruments. Everything you can think of was there. And it was in this barn area as well where we did this, amongst all of this collection of art pieces. And so if you can imagine all of the energy, all of the connections that are already active in that environment, for somebody who's sensitive, is a bit of a distraction. And I think that was part of the plan by the producers of this, so that we could get a very honest approach when we went within, instead of externalizing our experience. So by doing that, we went on this journey of remote viewing and brought forward some very interesting information, to which was credible information. And that was then given, shall we say, kudos to us both in that episode. All I can say is I'm not just going to tell you everything about that episode, but I'm using that as an example so that you can go and see it in action for yourself. So go and give them a visit there. Give them a like, a subscribe on YouTube, and that is the Supernatural UK, and you'll be able to see that very episode that I'm describing to you. But with this technique that I'm sharing with you, you can also look into future potentialities and have visions. And again, it's about not wishing to control or change anything, just being in alignment, being in flow of it, having some sort of recording device so that you can speak into it and share it as you're having that experience. I say potentialities because, as we know, we're constantly creating things. Our vibration, our energy, our thought processes, and our ability to have free will and make choices can change destinations of not only our own timelines, but the timelines of others around us. So it's interesting that, isn't it? So by being shown future timeline potentialities, this is you looking from that energetic viewpoint with all of those frequencies, all of those decisions, thought processes, alignments. From that particular point in time, you're moving from that ingredient to a future potentiality. Now, in that moment between then and that future potentiality, things can change. As I say, choices, thoughts, energies, locations can all change. And so that outcome is variable. So just bear that in mind, but it's worth exploring. A lot of the time you'll be surprised what does actually unfold that you've, shall we say, predicted or that you've seen. With this being said, I want to say this exercise that I've described to you, grounding is very, very important. Now, when you're going within and having this journey, so to speak, when you do finally come out of it, or the meditation ends, the music ends, you want to have some sort of implement like a grounding stone. This is something that I use. Have that near you, and this will anchor you back into your present moment reality consciousness. If you don't have anything like that, then I would recommend that you focus on all of your senses, your taste, your touch, your sight, your hearing, and just be here now and put your focus on all of those individually. And then that will bring you back into reality, and that will ground your energy. Take a look, focus in on your surroundings, the colors, the textures. Is it warm in there? Is it cold in there? How does it feel in your seated position? And just observe all of these elements, and that will ground your energy, because it will help you to function better in your own timeline in this reality. Now, there's another method, if you have time to do this, to ground, and I would recommend that you do this on a regular basis. And this is where I would certainly recommend that you go out in nature where there's woodland or water or something like that. And it really helps you to anchor and get that balance between this dimension and, your higher self, the spiritual dimension, and also doing this visiting other timelines. So you do need that balance, I would say. Then I would suggest, after you've had this visiting other timelines experience that I've just described to you, recollecting all of that information, all of those encounters that you've just experienced. Now, you can either write it down, you can record it via a voice recorder as you're having the experience. You can speak to maybe a colleague or a friend or a loved one as you're having this experience, and they can take the notes. They can then fill you in with the details, because when you are in the zone, you don't necessarily remember everything that you're experiencing because you're so open to it. And when you attach to maybe a thought or an experience, that, in my experience, takes you off from having that vision, that experience at a deeper level. So I would recommend that you do it on the fly, so to speak, or at least have somebody there with you. And then I would like to encourage you to share your experience, because talking about it makes other people intrigued about this particular modality, shall we call it. And it may enable them to give it a try for themselves. And as I said earlier, when we do go in and we maybe see the lessons, the blessings in a situation that we didn't in that moment in time when we've gone back in it, it will have a ripple effect to everything and everybody else. So everybody will benefit from it when we do have that eureka moment by doing this level of work. So you'll begin to find value in your experiences, in your life experiences, when you do get into this practice of doing this. Because as I said earlier, there's lots of sensors that were actually recording information at that moment in time that you wasn't aware of because your focus was on maybe one of those sensors. So it gives you a greater value and understanding of every single moment. You become more familiar of the rich tapestry of your life and how everything is connected. And also that by doing this, finding the value, what you're going to be doing is actually paying it forward by understanding the lessons that perhaps you didn't in the moment in time you were experiencing it. And so you do this by observing how you feel after having these encounters. I've spoke about it many times before, and I've labeled it as doing a baseline check. So this is where we observe our physicality, what we feel in our physical body, what we feel in our emotional state, and also what thoughts are dominating in our minds at that moment we're observing. And so I would recommend, after you have this experience, that you do this baseline check and notice the subtle shifts and changes that have occurred in your present moment consciousness that wasn't there a moment ago prior to having this encounter. You'll be pleasantly surprised, and based upon the experiences I've had, having done this myself many times now, you'll have a lot of eureka moments. You'll feel aligned, enlightened as well. You'll feel a lot more happy. It will feel like the jigsaw pieces of your life have been orchestrated by some higher power, and it will start to make sense to you more. And you'll start to show that level of gratitude for every single experience, no matter how you've perceived them over the years. By going back, maybe something that was quite negative that you went through and you perceived it as negative at that moment in time. When you do this exercise, you begin to actually unpick it, understand that there's great value within that situation, because it enabled the gift of contrast to be ever present in that particular situation. And I'm talking about when there's that level of contrast, we have the ability to make a choice. And this contrast has pushed us in a corner where we have to make a choice. We can either continue doing the same old, or we can make another decision, a choice that takes us on a new timeline, a different path. Perhaps we didn't see or even realize those opportunities were there. So it is an amazing experience. I'd like to encourage every single one of you, if you have time to do this, or if you are intrigued by the conversation that we've had today, just invest a little bit of time within yourself. It will certainly enrich your life. You'll walk away from these encounters very high vibrational. You'll have a different perspective, that's the word I was after, in life. And you'll start to value and treasure every moment, every person. And also, on another level, you'll start to prioritize your peace over drama and chaos. Go and give it a try. I hope it's added some value to you by listening to this part of the show today. So yes, certainly recommend it. It all starts with relaxation and the breathing, meditation, and then look for some sort of memory trigger popping up from nowhere and go and explore it. Drift off and have fun. Well, how's everybody's first couple of weeks of 2026 going? I just thought I'd make that inquiry with you all. For me personally, I've observed it running at a different pace than what I'm used to, and I think that a lot of that was down to the end of 2025, December, as I've said in a previous episode, that I had to slow down, and it was quite something to just slow down the pace of life and just accept things as they are without feeling panicked, stressed. So I'm finding already that is translating into this first couple of weeks of January for me. And I'm being more encouraged by my situations in life that I am to walk with faith and also have that level of trust that everything's working out as it should, even though on paper, so to speak, things can look a little bit scary, if you understand my meaning. Obviously, Christmas can be a financial money pot, shall we say, for the year. So like most, I myself are getting on my feet from that experience. So yeah, already I'm finding that this year is more of a go with the flow and just be open to possibility and change rather than having that urge to push, to forage out of desperation, to control. So for me, it's been an unusual one. I'll try and speak correctly, shall I? But I am finding in terms of connection with spirit, it's ever present, and I'm noticing this on a daily basis. I'm getting that encouragement, that intuitive hit, that inspiration to forge ahead and to hold that faith. And I'm getting little breadcrumbs, if you will, from spirit, showing me the way, guiding me on this new pathway that I'm treading in 2026. Already, as I alluded to in the previous episode, I've had a beautiful blessing that entered my life in the form of a relationship, and that came completely out of the blue. So I'm really, really blessed. And in fact, I've got to touch upon this slightly because a lot of my spiritual development students were saying to me last year about a particular relationship coming in. And they gave me some specific details and things, and I was open to it. I was open to it at the time, and I just said, "Yeah, thank you very much. I'll look out for that. I really appreciate you diving in deep there for me with that message, with that reading." And so, a lot of the students in all the classes were saying this, and for it to finally materialize into my life, I tell you, it was such a beautiful end to the year of 2025, this coming in, and everything that they were saying about this young lady, shall I say, was absolutely spot on. So, a credit to my students and their connection to their guides and linking in with my vibration in order to bring forward that information. So I thought I'd share that with you because, I'm still pretty surprised by it all, the way it all unfolded for me. I thought I would share a little bit more with you on that score. But how's everybody else doing? Have you noticed energetic changes happening in your life? Have you noticed that you're not charging ahead, you're more chilled out a little bit more than you have been in previous years? Also, how are you feeling in your energetic body? Are you finding that you get what you need when you need it in terms of energy, in terms of motivation, or are you feeling quite sluggish? Most people feel quite sluggish after the festive season, don't they? And it takes them a while to get motivated and moving, whereas others, they want to go to the gym. They want to burn off all of that excess food that they had in the festive season. It depends, doesn't it? It's all an individual process. But I thought I'd reach out to you, share my observations so far of 2026. I feel as though it's going to be a very interesting year this year, full of unfoldments on personal levels, but also collectively on a global scale. I do feel as though there's going to be lots rising up to the surface that we weren't previously known to us all. So there's going to be a lot of surprises coming up. And it's how we deal with that information that's either going to make or break us on an individual basis this year. So now we're going to move into the channel section of the show. So sit back and relax and enjoy.
Hello, you don't mind me coming through and having a word with you, do you? It's an absolute honour to speak through the vessel today. We've been waiting so long to get through to you. Anyway, what we'd like to talk about with you today is some beautiful things, really. We want to talk about all the beauty around you in your earth environment. Things that you haven't really been paying attention to because you've been filtering it out for so long. We're talking about the elementals, the fae, the fairy kingdom. And I know that sounds a little bit crazy for most of you that are listening to this, but we want to assure you that these things do truly exist. These are part of the custodians of the universe. In fact, these beings, these entities, these creatures, whichever terminology you wish to use to describe them, they have been zipping in and out of your dimension for quite some time. They've been using what we would call portals in order to make themselves appear and then disappear. They're very, very highly intelligent levels of beings, and part of their mission really and their existence is to keep charge of the, shall we say, the natural order of things in your environment, not just on this planet and universe, but in other dimensions as well. Now, we know that sounds again a little bit out there and hard to believe, but we want to assure you that whenever you've been out in your what you would describe as nature, the countryside, and you see these glittering, flittering lights that just come and go and meander around the place, almost looking like they're observing. Well, this is that community that we speak of. Now, these lights can be opened up and can zip and zap into multiple dimensions. But the reason is they're very intrigued by human beings that do resonate on a higher frequency. They're intrigued of why you're there, and because they're very territorial, you see. They like to look after their kingdom. They like to look after their patch, so to speak. And so when anybody of a high vibrational essence goes in those areas, then they what you would describe as allow themselves to be observed themselves. So, in other words, you will see them or facets of them. They don't just expose themselves to anybody, only those of a higher vibration that have an understanding of energy and a sensitivity that they can interact with, that offers no potential threat or danger to them. That's why they allow themselves to be seen in this manner. Now, what they do is they like to keep things on a level pegging, so to speak, in terms of nature. They like to make sure that everything is in order. And not only do they feed and nourish and make sure all of the nutrients are there given to the plant life and the fauna and the flora and all of that, but they also help with the energy that it takes to create such creation. Now, in order to keep the energy pure, these beings make sure that they go around and cleaning, decluttering, getting rid of all the unnecessary vibrations that are not required in order for these things to flourish. Now, what you will find is more so now than ever that this particular level of being, the Fae, the elementals, will start to be more prominent in your society. Now, we realize that that sounds absolutely bizarre and insane for you to hear this transmission, but we want you to recognize when you do see these twinkling lights coming from wooded areas or maybe a garden or grassland, and there would be no potential reason for that light to be emitting in that area. We want to tell you to explore it with playful curiosity and be open to the possibility that this is what you're truly encountering during this time. You will also know that there will be a sensation around you of peace and harmony and also joviality when you see these beings. They mean you no harm, they're just as inquisitive as you are. So when they come through, just say thank you and realize what a pleasure and how privileged you are to witness this encounter. They do various other roles, you must understand, on multiple dimensions. Now, most of these roles that they do undertake are connected with transformation of energy, moving stagnant, shall we say, redundant energy into creativity, into light, and into a vibration that can be used and utilized in order to manifest and shall we say, unfold creation at its higher level. Now, you'll know when you walk in some of these places that on some level there's various very territorial beings, like we say, the elementals, that feel threatened by certain, shall we say, humanity, human interaction in those parts. So what they will do is, if they take a great displeasure and disliking to you, they will cause some sort of mischief so that you will feel slightly alarmed and maybe slightly intimidated by being in that presence. The idea behind it is not to harm you in any way, but just to intimidate you enough to move out of that vicinity so that they can carry out their work and keep that energy pure and strong and remain in that high vibrational state. Because they do put a lot of time, attention and effort into their environments, and so that's where they're very precious about them. So just a little bit of information for you to know about the Fae, the elementals and the fairy community, and just for you to be more aware of them, because there's going to be a lot more sightings than what has been previously at least admitted to in the past. You'll have a job to capture them on film or camera, because they are very cunning in the way that they decloak their vibrations so that you can interact and see them. So if you do have the pleasure of capturing such a creature, then know that you are equally very honored and privileged to have done that. And it would have been with their permission for you to capture that also. So it's a great privilege to be in that vibration. So what we'd like to do is now pass you over to another communicator that's wanting to come through and talk to you about another subject entirely. But for now, thank you for listening and embracing some of these unusual methods of communication with you and these subjects that we bring across to you today. We hope to speak to you very soon, and we wish you all the love in the world. Bye for now.
What a wonderful transmission there from the world of spirit. I'm really delighted to hear all of that information come through today. And I'm sure we can all extract some value from being a part of it and listening to it. However, what I am finding recently with some of the channelings that are coming from spirit, particularly in the trance medium session, a recent session that we had, is that we're getting different communicators coming through and communicating through visions, symbolisms, and energy. And they're transporting and changing the vibration of energy in such a way that it's having a profound effect on the physical, mental, and spiritual bodies within the collective, within that trance mediumship development circle. So we had that recently, and it was quite something else. It left us all speechless. We were just in awe of what had happened. We couldn't make head and a tail of it. However, we all observed that we felt very different from having that encounter. So anyway, we're going to move into the next segment of the show, which is this week's sneaky peek energy forecast reading. So sit back, relax, and extract what you will from the reading. Hello, my name is Glenn Boddice and I'm a spiritual medium, and welcome to this week's energy forecast reading for the week commencing Monday, the 12th of January 2026. Now, those of you that have seen me work before know that I connect with my spirit guides and helpers and also link in with the wisdom of the angel tarot cards. So what I'm about to do, shuffle the cards and allow a card to come out for this week's forecast reading. Okay, so here is your card for this week's reading. I'm now going to link into the vibration of that and see what needs to come forward for you. First of all, I'm hearing the word magic for this week, and I'm hearing the word spellcasting. What I also feel this week is that you're going to be changing your mind about things. And what I mean by this is previously to this year, you've said, no, I'm never going to do that. No, that's not for me. This week we'll see you changing your mind and actually warming to new adventures, new situations, and maybe new projects there. So just have an open mind and trust your gut instinct. This week we'll also see you paying attention to your physical health. And what I mean by that is you looking at your diet, what you're consuming, the amount of exercise that you're doing, and making sure that you have that balance quite right. On one way or another, you are certainly conscious of your health this week. So you're just going to be focused on that a little bit more than you normally are. This is the end of the free version of the weekly forecast reading. If you would like to see the entirety of this week's forecast reading, then you can do that by subscribing. And as a subscriber, what you will receive is the full version of the weekly forecast reading. You will also receive the audio for the weekly radio show, and also you'll receive 10% off all of my spiritual services there. So this includes all of the readings there for you to benefit from. And also you will receive new updates and information and news of what's happening with myself and the services that I provide, and also the events that I take part in. You'll hear all about that ahead of everybody else. And this is because you're a subscriber to Glenn Boddice Spiritual Medium. So you can find a link either above or below this video, where by clicking on the link, you can then become a subscriber to reap all of the benefits that I've described to you. So I look forward to having you on this journey with me as a Glenn Boddice Spiritual Medium subscriber. Thank you for taking time to watch this video and supporting the work that Spirit and myself work together in doing so. Well, it sounds like we're in for a fascinating week ahead, albeit a sneaky peek of that with the forecast reading. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I hope you found value in it, something that maybe you could explore further in this year. If you want to contact me or reach out, you can find me at www.glennboddicespiritualmedium.com, or you can email me at glennboddice@live.co.uk. It would be fascinating to hear from you. Have a fabulous week, everybody. I'll see you at the same place, same time next Monday, 4 p.m. God bless. Have a great week. Thank you for listening to From Beyond. For more information about what products and services Glenn provides, go to glennboddicespiritualmedium.com